Hey there folks, in this video I wanted to cover how I made this tiny little diorama display base. Now to be fair, this video is a little bit less structured and less tutorial-like than the other ones I've made so far. This is more of an overall process video, just to show you how I make these dioramic bases and that they can be pretty easily made. And of course I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you have in the comments below. Okay, so to start out we have this piece of foam here. This is some modeling foam, but any kind of foam will do as long as the foam is dense enough. You don't want this standard packing foam stuff. First thing we want to do is place our model on the scene and start sketching out some of the features of the scene. So once I've sketched out the rough shapes of the scene, I'm using a blunt object, in this case the back end of a tool, pressing in the shapes into the foam. This doesn't have to be perfect. We'll be covering the entire terrain with texture and grass and whatnot, so this is just the basic shapes and features of the terrain. Once I have the big shapes pressed out, I use a smaller tool to get around the smaller edges and push down more detail into the foam. Now an important thing is to keep putting your model onto the scene, just to see if the size is correct, if you're happy with the placement, and if it's a pleasurable thing to look at. So now that I'm happy with the initial shape, I'm just going to use a spare track piece to imprint the ground with the track and where the tank is driven. With the tracks imprinted and a final check with the tank in place, if I'm happy with this, then we'll go on to the next step, which is making some texture for the ground. Now for this, there's a million products out there. In this case, I've cut open some tea bags, just some standard Earl Grey English tea. It's a really nice mix of small particles and tiny leaves, the perfect base for your texture work. And as an added bonus, it smells very nice too. To stick this onto the foam, I really just use a simple mixture of tacky glue and then some water. Just mix it up and paint it onto the foam. And then all that's left is just simply sprinkle on your texture material. And finally we do a quick inspection if we like what we have so far. I kind of kept the road part a bit clean, because if there's a lot of vehicles driving over it, it would compact the terrain a bit. But other than that, I went all out with the texture here. Now to give a little bit more life to this scene, we're going to add some pebbles, some rocks, a twig and some other stuff. So I just super glue on these little pieces wherever I feel like there should be some more detail, and then wait for it to dry. And then finally I add this little twig I found in the garden. It's like a tree trunk laying around. Now of course it won't be an autumn scene without some grass. I start by applying some of the glue mixture I had before over the terrain, and then I get my trusty static applicator. Now these things are really fun and a bit dangerous. You can shock yourself if you don't watch out. Now for this video I won't go super in depth on how to apply static grass. There's a lot of videos out there on how this works. For now just watch me apply this grass and enjoy. I do end up removing some of the grass and also flattening some of it. I kind of want to go for an early autumn vibe. The grass isn't perfectly healthy anymore, so some of it is flattened, some of it is a bit rough, which I kind of like. So here we have the grassy field. Start to look a lot more like a natural diorama now. So that looks pretty good. The only thing is I feel there's too much grass, so we take our tweezers here and start plucking away at the grass, making it a bit more random, a bit more natural than just a uniform coat of grass, and just removing some of it to show the stones and the tree trunk a bit more. Now that I'm happy with the amount of grass, I start cutting away some of it. Let's call it mowing the lawn. And in fact, if my girlfriend sees this, she'll probably be mad because those are her sewing scissors. But just start cutting away, trimming down the grass to be way shorter than it originally is. You want like 2 or 3 millimeters height. Okay, that's looking good. Quite happy with that. We're almost ready to start painting. The last step I want to do before that is add some bushes to the whole diorama, just to add some more visual interest and height difference. I have 2 different variants here, and they help add some visual interest to your diorama. Okay, so on to the painting. This first step is really fun. So I'm using a simple acrylic black primer. It unifies all the stuff you've done before and gives you a look into how the final diorama is going to look like. Yeah, this next part of the video is kind of the reason why this is not so much a tutorial as it is just a look into my process. I'm painting several colors and I kind of mix as I go. So first thing we'll do is start with some green here, light green, mix with some yellow to get this nice forest green look for the grass. Now we'll add a bit more vibrant dark green to the mix and start getting some highlights into the bushes and to the tips of the grass as well. I mixed some of orange, brown and yellow into the green paint I had before, which results in this nice brownish orangish color. Next up is painting the dirt road, which we'll paint in a similar brown color as the brown dirt on the tank as we made that. Okay, and so here we have our very basic scene. I'm quite happy with the direction it's going, but it definitely needs more highlights and shadows. To highlight the road, I'm using this sand colored paint. Just dry brush it straight onto the road, highlight especially the track area so you see all the raised and lowered sections way clearer. I also paint the dirt in between some of the grassy patches to give that a little bit of a lighter highlight as well. Now that I'm happy with that, we'll use some nice bright green paint and start painting the tips of the grass blades very carefully, not to put too much paint or there or clump them together, but this gives a really nice natural highlight to the grass. And while we're at it, we'll also add some of the more autumn orange colors to some of the grass and the bushes. Now with the highlights taken care of, I start adding some shadows and darker tones to the edges of the grass and in the recesses of the diorama. especially in the track marks on the ground, which we really want to emphasize and show off. Just using good old Tamiya panel liner for this, but you can use any kind of oil wash or enamel wash, whatever you want, really. Just like with the track marks, I also add some shadows to the stones and the base of the trunk. Now to try out something different for myself as well, I bought this little leaf stencil cutter. It's pretty fun. I think it's a bit too big for 1/35 scale, so I ended up grinding some of the leaves with my hands a bit. I just threw them all over and flipped it over and tapped the bottom just to throw most of it off again. I just want to get some dead leaves and debris stuck in between the leaves. Now as I went along, I thought the leaves were a bit too yellow, so I used some Rush Streak Wash to essentially glue them down to the scenery and also make them darker at the same time. And then as a final detail, I paint some of the rocks and other small bits in different shades of grey, brown, reddish and blackish colors. And really give some more visual detail to look at the terrain. I also apply the same paint to the bigger stones that I've placed before. And now the only thing left to do is paint the edges of the diorama completely black to remove all the overspray and make it a final unified piece. So let's take a final look at the diorama as it is without the tank on it or any figures. I'm actually really happy with the way everything turned out. And here's the final result. Initially I wanted to make the tank a moving tank with a little commander sitting on a cupola, but I had these two guys laying around and I really enjoyed the idea of them running into this abandoned tank. Maybe it ran out of gas, who knows. Yeah, I like this scene a lot. It's like an abandoned beast of war type of feel. I really enjoy making these small dioramas. They really increase the value of displaying your model without being this giant project with all kinds of details you have to think about. So as usual, I'd like to thank you for watching. I hope you found this video enjoyable, if maybe a bit less educational than my other videos so far. If you'd like to see more, check me out on @DutchGuyMakesModels on Instagram. And if you enjoy what I do, please consider subscribing and watching my videos. It really helps out a lot. For now, see you later.